Hello Aries and welcome to your year 2023 deep dive special astrology and horoscope forecast. Thank you so much for joining me. A year is a very long period to dissect, and it's important that the information I give you is really relatable. So what I'm going to do first of all is give you the structure of how I'm going to approach this task. First of all, I'm going to give you a bit of a brief summary of some of the exciting events which are set to unfold for your sign in particular. But then I'm going to look at what the lunar eclipse of the 8th of November 2022 created, because that's a 6-month influence, and how that is providing a following wind as we enter into this new year. Now in astrology, the start of the astrological year is with the spring equinox, and we get 4 quadrants, 4 cardinal quadrants from that spring equinox, then the summer solstice, the autumnal equinox, and then the winter solstice, and each are 13 weeks long. But of course that doesn't fit with the year that starts on the 1st of January. So what I want to do is look at what the winter solstice said for year 2022, because that really provides an insight for the first 12 weeks of year 2023. And then going to look at the solar return. So as the new year begins, what's the relationship between all the key players in the heavens? Because that gives us a bit of a clue of what we can expect are going to be very important influences throughout the whole year. For example, one of them is a glorious sextile between your ruler Mars and also Jupiter, the planet of growth and fortune, which is in your sign. So that's really exciting, and I can't wait to share that with you. I'm then going to divide the rest of the year through those other 3 quadrants, starting with the spring equinox, then the summer solstice, then the autumnal equinox, and finally, as we come into the home straight of the year, we can have a look at the 4th cardinal quadrant of 2023. Now, of course, we're also going to have 2 incredibly important eclipses this year, solar eclipses, and one of them features your sign. And you have the North Node returning to you on the 12th of July for the first time in 18.5 years. So that's a really important thing to share with you. And Jupiter, the planet of fortune, traditionally, is going to be moving into your sector of everyday money on the 16th of May. So that's really encouraging, but we must remember that it does go into a retrograde through the last weeks of this year, and it only comes out of that retrograde on the 30th of December. So we need to keep a little bit of a toe on terra firma, and of course Pluto is also going to have a little bit of a dabble in the sign of Aquarius, which is the sign of humanity. It's going to be moving there for a much longer duration in January at the start of next year, 2024. But also I want to track very, very carefully all the lunations of this year, and particularly the influence or impact on your sign of your ruler Mars, because if we understand what's going on with Mars, that's going to give us a lot of insights. I think a lot of astrologers on YouTube particularly will focus a lot on Saturn moving into Pisces, but I think the real story of this year is a lot to do with Neptune, and that's already in the sign of Pisces, because Neptune makes some key influences as far as you're concerned this year. And also we have a midpoint at the very start of the year at just under 6-7 degrees Pisces, also in your 12th house. So the psychology of your year is not going to be influenced just by Saturn. There's much more than that to share. So I'm going to go through it in this structured way to break it down, so I hope it's all relatable for you. And if you would like to understand what year 2023 will hold for you as an individual, if you give me 3 pieces of your birth data of time, date and place of birth, I can give you a roadmap that can guide you for the rest of your life in terms of understanding some of the repetitive patterns that may have caused a few issues for you, but also where you can seize opportunities. But if you order your personal forecast before the end of 22, the rest of 22 free, all of 23 plus 30% off. Please see the link beneath this video. So Aries, I want to give you a flavour of what you can expect in terms of the major ingresses this year. So Saturn moves on the 7th of March into the tender 12th house, the sector of reflection. Saturn can be about limitation, but if we work at it, it can bring rewards. Then we have Pluto, the planet of transformation, moves into the sign of the collective, influencing your long-term future briefly on March the 23rd, only through to June the 11th this year. But then Jupiter, the planet of growth, of optimism, and traditionally of fortune in astrology, moves into your sector of everyday money for just over a year on the 16th of May. That's really exciting. Perhaps even more exciting is the fact the North Node returns to your sign for the first time in 18.5 years on the 12th of July. So that's really critical because that is encouraging you to embrace your own power. Now, in addition to these, we have 2 lunations in your sign. When we have the first cardinal quadrant, the spring equinox triggers this on the 20th of March. There is also a new moon in your sign, but it is going to be squaring your ruler Mars, which is getting to the end of its journey in the sign of Gemini. So it's a dissociate square. That I need to share with you in quite some detail. But even more dramatic is the solar eclipse in your sign on the 20th or 21st of April, depending on where you are in the world, because that combines with Jupiter before it moves into Taurus. But the Sun, the Moon and Jupiter all square up to Pluto. This is one of the most powerful planetary influences you can possibly have, but it's meshed in with that solar eclipse, which provides the backdrop of energy for the following 6 months. So really dramatic stuff. And of course, Venus, the planet of love and relating through its rulership of the sign of Libra, is in your 5th house for 4.5 long months. Okay, for 6 weeks of that it is in retrograde, which can be a bit tricky. But Venus in the sign of Leo makes the more affectionate and flirty and glamorous vibration of this particular planet really come to life. So if you're wanting to bring new energy into your romantic situation, that is very exciting too. So those are some major themes to look out for. But please stay with me. I'm now going to break it all down. So I'm going to examine the energy you've brought into this new year, partially through that lunar eclipse of the 8th of November, partially through the 4th cardinal quadrant of 2022, which occurred on December the 21st, because that's quite critical. That provides an energy for the first around about 12 weeks of this new year. Then we have the solar return. That provides a backdrop for the whole year. And there are some very important pieces of information to share with you. Then I'm going to go through each of the months in fine detail, share all the lunations with you in terms of the new moon and all the key influences and aspects. So by the time I summarize all this, I hope you will have a very clear and concise picture of the major things you need to work with and look out for in 2023. So let's just go from that lunar eclipse of the 8th of November. So the Sun was in the sign of Scorpio. the moon in Taurus opposing the sun, but the moon very close to the restless and disruptive energies of Uranus in a retrograde. But T-squaring these influences was Saturn, the planet of structure, but also potential of limitation in the sign of the collective, Aquarius. So all of our finances are going to be massively impacted by that total lunar eclipse. And the headwinds this creates is something that you will have to deal with as well. So there can be turbulence, unexpected changes. I think we're going to see further costs increasing, interest rates going up, instability in general. But then we have Cardinal Quadrant for 2022, which just also occurs on the 21st of December. And that therefore just gives you about 10 days of 2022, but therefore the first 12 weeks of the new year strongly influenced by that event. So let's look at that one first of all. Now the sun is at 0 degrees in Capricorn. Capricorn for you is very much about success, status, your connection to the world, more traditional strands in your situation, but also how other people see you. But Jupiter in your sign has rewound through its 4-month retrograde through your sign into Pisces and then back into your sign. So on that particular event, it's at 0 degrees. So the sun is square Jupiter. Now that can give a quite generous and bubbly and exuberant and optimistic vibe. But also it's important to understand the midpoint between the sun at 0 degrees Capricorn and the moon is at 19 degrees Sagittarius, which of course is your sister fire sign. And that's about expansion for you, travel, higher education, but most of all being quite free-spirited. But that squares with Neptune in your 12th house. And Neptune in the 12th house can create confusion, distortion, anxiety, and even see us at times baffle ourselves. So very important, that particular influence, because it can amplify your sensitivities. But also for the first 12 weeks of this year, Mars, your ruler in retrograde at this point, is opposite the moon on that particular event, and that can create very polarized energies and very reactive responses. And because it's going across your 3rd and 9th houses, that is very much to do with ideas and conversations. So the added sensitivity that you're going to be feeling in the first 12 weeks of this year can also see you quickly respond to what you see as criticism or unfair points of view in a potentially defensive way. So very important to bear that Cardinal Quadrant energy in mind as you make your way into this new year. But the solar return for the new year does have the sun, as always, right at the top of your scope in Capricorn, and it's forging a terrific angle with Uranus in house 2. So you will be one of the trendsetters this year in trying to find new ways to marshal your resources and to try to be as innovative as possible. But Mercury, the planet of communication, is in Capricorn in retrograde, and it's going to go through 3 retrogrades in earth signs this year. And then from the 23rd of December at the end of year 2023, it does go into Sagittarius within its rewind from Capricorn. So the retrogrades through all those earth signs mean that throughout 2023 you have to be very vigilant, practical and precise around managing your resources. It's not a time to be too sort of free and easy, you know, being very very applied in your approach and concentrated can help to reduce the potential for some difficulties. But Venus is exactly conjunct later on the 1st of January with Pluto. So some kind of fated relationship is going to impact on your professional situation this year. If you have good relationships in an existing business or organisation, this can be a real gift. But if you move into a new organisation, one person's admiration or respect for you can really help you to claim much greater recognition. But in a more romantic context, Venus in Capricorn combining with Pluto could see with a desire, if you're single, to bring a relationship into your world that is more solid, more long-lasting, a bit more traditional. If you're in a relationship which is progressing forwards well, this gives you the incentive to take it to the next step of commitment, whether it is getting a home together or getting spliced, having children. That's entirely possible. But that Mercury retrograde suggests that precision is absolutely vital. But perhaps the most exciting of the aspects at the turn of the year is that Jupiter in your sign just is in a sextile with Mars, your ruler, in the third house. So third house is going to give you enormous enthusiasm, drive and passion for the things that really excite you this year. This is a real galvanizing angle, and it's going to provide that energy for the whole of the year. So I absolutely love that for you. Now on January the 12th, Mars is going to end its retrograde, but it's going to be with you through to March the 25th. And remember, the third house is very much about moving around quickly, short journeys, can be to do with ideas, technology, vehicles, sports. So all of those can have a big place to play in the first quarter of this year. On January the 18th, Mercury goes direct in the sign of Capricorn. If you have been waiting for some news on a job application or about a presentation or something to do with retraining, the chances are you'll get that news soon. January the 21st sees the new moon in Aquarius, but on the same day, Venus in Aquarius is combining with Saturn. If you have a friendship which you really treasure, that friendship could get even more committed over the next 4 weeks. Equally, if you have a friendship which is not working as you want, the chances are it could start to spin out of your orbit in the following 4 weeks. Now, January the 22nd sees Uranus end the first of its retrogrades, because it goes into a retrograde later in the year, but that is in the sign of Taurus still. So Uranus stays in Taurus for the whole of this year, but it does move forward to about 4 degrees, and 15 degrees to 19 degrees at the end of the year. Now, February the 20th sees a Pisces new moon, but it's going to be conjunct Saturn, and this potentially can be quite challenging. Saturn just about to move into the sign of Pisces on March the 7th, right at the end of Aquarius, but the Pisces new moon is so early, you have a conjunction. It's a disassociate one. That suggests any anxieties or concerns that have been lurking in the background may come to the fore over the next 4 weeks. And remember that Cardinal Quadrant 4 from last year, that emphasized that potential for a clash between the midpoint in Sagittarius and also Neptune in Pisces. So the more psychological theme that's developing this year is going to coexist with one that's encouraging you to be more individualistic. So really quite paradoxical energies. But March the 7th does see Saturn arrive in your 12th house. And it's going to be there through to the 25th of May 2025, when it will move into your sign. Now, one of the things that you hear about Saturn is that wherever it is, it's going to bring some misery. What it can bring is empowerment through hard work. So the 12th house of your situation, which is very much to do with the part of our nature we don't necessarily find easy to integrate, so the subconscious. It can be the parts of our nature we don't want to look at. It can be things we want to keep secret from other people. It can be things we want to do out of sight from others, so any plotting or cunning that we may cultivate, but it can also, in traditional astrology, mean hidden enemies. So people who won't necessarily show their hand to us, but will work in very subtle ways to undermine our aims and objectives. So Saturn is going to be very active around all those areas right through to the 25th of May 2025. But on March the 14th we have another very psychological influence when Mars in your third house of everyday communication clashes with Neptune for the third time. This occurred twice last year exactly, and this could see some kind of subterfuge going on around your situation. So keep your guard up at that point. Now, Cardinal Quadrant 1 occurs on the 20th of March, and this is really wonderful because the Sun moves back to your sign, which is absolutely delightful because it brings you into the moment. And of course, it's going to last right through to the summer solstice. So this is your chance to really use those powers of initiation, of courage, to listen to your instincts and go with it if you get that inner green light from your gut feeling. The problem is, Aries, is the midpoint on that particular event is at 24 degrees in Pisces conjunct Neptune, and that is squaring Mars. So that Neptune square Mars on March the 14th is still there a week later. It's a bit broader because it's no longer exact, but the midpoint is conjunct Neptune squaring Mars. So the potential for intrigue is building up. But on March the 21st, the first of the Aries new moons gives you a chance to really attack whatever is important for you. Get on the front foot. Your physical vitality can increase despite those Piscean influences. But there is that square with your ruler Mars, preparing to go into the sign of Cancer. So right at the end, and we get a dissociate square. So over the next 13 weeks, you can go for things in a very direct way, but if you're too impetuous, Mars, that could see you working against your own best interest, particularly around anything to do with a property matter or your family. So try to marshal any impatience that might be bubbling up during those 13 weeks. But with Mars nearly in the sign of Cancer, it is actually forging a pretty stable angle to, guess what? Saturn in Pisces. So as ever with astrology, we get more challenging influences coexisting with more positive ones. But in March the 23rd, Pluto makes its way into Aquarius. This is your 11th house. I think for us all, we're going to see huge changes in society, and they're going to be really manifest by the time Pluto moves into Aquarius for a much longer spell at the start of January 2024. So I feel for you, you may find yourself thinking more about how you can collaborate and network with others, but it could also see you thinking about who you can really trust and rely upon in your immediate friendship circle. Now, on April the 20th or 21st, we have that stunning solar eclipse conjoining with Jupiter in your sign, but squaring Pluto. This gives you a chance over the following 6 months to make enormous progress. And if you really want to be very single-minded and not be affected at all by anyone else's opinion or feelings, there's every chance you can make that progress. The problem is that can bring a karmic reaction which won't be so good for you. So the trick with Pluto and Jupiter, Jupiter's philosophy, Pluto power, Sun our innate potential, the Moon our feelings. When we get all these energies coexisting, it's important to make sure that the drive that you're demonstrating actually works for you, but actually is pretty respectful to other people as well. Now on May the 1st, Mercury goes into retrograde in the sign of Taurus, so your sector of everyday resources. So very disciplined application around any transactions that you might be carrying out, any ways in which you're trying to reduce your costs or improve your income is absolutely vital. But on May the 5th or 6th, depending on where you're living in the world, there is a lunar eclipse in the sign of Scorpio. So this is the opposite eclipse to what occurred on the 8th of November in 2022. But once more, Uranus is in the mix. So we can get a further bite of instability kick in at that point. But on the 15th, Mercury does go direct, which I think we will all be letting a sigh of relief out. And I think critically, better news can come on May the 16th when Jupiter moves into the sign of Taurus for you. Now, it's going to be there for 1 year and 9 days. So back to its more traditional annual return for each sign. It's obviously been quite complex over the last couple of years. But for you, very good news. So from May the 16th, I think you can start to really work at the ways that you can apply your ingenuity to your ideas. Now, May the 17th through to the 16th of June, but exact on the 1st of June, there is that combination between Jupiter and the North Node. And I think this can be quite fortunate for you. I really do, despite the fact that the outer conditions may be quite challenging. Now on May the 19th, there's the Taurus new moon, but that's sextile Mars. So Mars in the sign of Cancer by now, very much about home. If you can sort of rework your financial budget, your domestic situation in some kind of way, that's going to be a valuable thing to do at that time. On May the 20th, Mars moves into Leo, which is particularly relevant for you because Mars, your ruler, the sign of Leo is a fellow fire sign, and it's going to be there through till the 10th of July. So this is going to bring out the most passionate side of your nature. You could find yourself feeling a lot more amorous, but also a lot more alluring too. However, on May the 21st, there is a clash between Mars and Pluto, but that could give you the push, if there is someone you really like romantically, to just go outside your comfort zone, to really go for it. But equally, it could see you in some kind of big conflict with somebody who sees something different to you. Could be a partner, it could be a friend, maybe it's a conflict that's going to go on inside yourself about how you express yourself, and kind of feel that you're working towards an expression of your talents which fits in with your future plan. Now, I mentioned on June the 1st that the North Node and Jupiter will be exact, but on June the 6th, a very big event, because Venus moves into the sign of Leo, and it's going to be there for 4.5 months, right through to October the 5th. And for sure, especially with having Mars there, you know, this is really going to give your sense of attraction, your sense of allure, a massive shot of extra confidence. Now, the retrograde of Venus is going to occur from the 23rd of July to the 3rd of September, and I'll tell you about that in more detail when we get to that part of the year. But on June the 11th, just know that Pluto does return back into Capricorn, but it is still very late in Capricorn. So if you're born quite late in Aries, in the last few degrees of Aries, Pluto is still impacting on your role in the world in a major way. So on June the 17th, Saturn goes into a retrograde which will last through to the 4th of November. Now, if there are any repetitive patterns in your life around struggles, inhibitions, anxieties, low self-esteem, or feeling that other people aren't necessarily very supportive or even go out their way, however subtly, to block you, this is going to be a critical period of learning and opening up. It may see your emotional energy drop, but you must retain your sense of self-belief, because every experience we have in life is a bridge to greater knowledge. And, you know, I really say that as someone who hasn't found life easy at all. So I think I have Saturn conjunct Mars in my natal chart, which is a pretty difficult aspect to say the least. So just be aware that if challenges come up or you feel isolated or distanced from others, there's something to learn from this. And June the 18th actually sees a new moon in your sector of everyday ideas. Once again, Neptune comes in to provide a challenge because it's squaring up to this new moon. So your sense of certainty or trust in some people around you over the following month once more may be shook. The Cardinal Quadrant 2 with the summer solstice occurs on June the 21st, ending on the 23rd of September. The following 13 weeks though, wow, you have Venus conjunct Mars in Leo. Now, they may not be together for that long, but on this particular point, they are connected closely enough. So your pulling power, despite anything that may be going on at a deeper level, which you feel is eroding your confidence or focusing on your weaknesses, if ever there was a chance to showcase what makes you you, it's certainly that 13-week period. Also, Jupiter in Taurus is making a very substantive link with Saturn. So despite Saturn's retrograde, Jupiter growth, Saturn restraint is a nice balance because they offset each other's most definite quality. July the 12th, massive event. The North Node reversing into your sign for the first time in 18.5 years. So this is something to really savour. If you go back about 9.25 years ago, you had the reverse nodal return when the North Node passed through Libra. So that was very much about relationships. This now, collectively for us all, is relearning our approach to life to be more ingenious and really falling back on our core creativity, not being so cosseted by material wealth and assets. So this is something collectively that's very important for personkind. July the 17th sees the Cancer new moon, very much about home, family, emotion, in a very good sextile to Uranus. So free up some space, sell off some stuff you don't need. If you can think about downsizing, perhaps remortgaging or paying off some debt that's to do with your property, a great thing to do at that point and the following 4 weeks. July the 23rd, just mentioning again, Venus goes into retrograde through to the September the 3rd. If you're in a relationship, a love relationship, which is less satisfactory, it may be very playful, but maybe it doesn't have the solidness that you're craving. Maybe because of all these Neptunian and Piscean influences and Saturn being in your 12th house, you need something that has a deeper psychological benefit to you. If you feel that you and your partnership are working at a more surface level, you could crave for something deeper. It doesn't have to be a negative. It's something you can grow from. August the 1st sees an Aquarius full moon. Over the next 2 weeks, you may need to just toggle your time a little bit. But Mars is forging a very positive link with Jupiter, and Mars in Virgo is asking you to show sacrifice, but also be precise. And that can bring in some money through a professional situation. Also, Mercury is opposite Saturn around that time. I think important to make sure that you don't make any assumptions on any contractual matter or anything to do with a document. If you're sending an email at that time, try to be very conscious of what's going on. A fantastic, for you anyway, Leo new moon on August the 16th, because it is conjunct Venus. So for the following 4 weeks, this really gives so much warmth and radiance to your personality. Embrace it. August the 23rd, however, does see Mercury go into its third retrograde of the year through to the 15th of September, and it's in that sector of precision, the sign of Virgo, which it governs. if you aren't really on the ball, some minor detail, or it seems to be a minor detail, could catch you out. August the 27th, sees Mars move into your opposite sign. This is critical because Mars is actually in detriment there through to the 12th of October, but ironically can give you the desire to get on the front foot when it comes to relationship matters. August the 29th sees Uranus go back into retrograde, and that's going to last into next year. August the 31st, the Pisces full moon, this is tricky, is conjunct Saturn. So again, your psychological sector is calling out for greater feeding and nourishing. If you've ever thought of, perhaps doing some study in terms of psychology, or having some therapy, or some alternative treatments that are very healing and nurturing, more holistic approaches to your health, a tremendous time to go for it from August the 31st. But all through this year, you can see your desire to manifest your individuality is very strong, but you have to be joined up with that other, perhaps more tender side of your nature. Now, on September the 3rd, Venus goes direct. If there has been uncertainty around a romantic relationship, it can be clarified. But Jupiter goes retrograde on September the 4th, and really right through till virtually the end of the year. So money in the last quarter of this year will need careful stewardship. September the 15th, Virgo new moon, however, great link to Uranus. So again, precision linked to innovation can work well for you. Mercury goes direct, however, which is terrific. And then on September the 23rd, we have Cardinal Quadrant 3, so the autonomal equinox. So this one I think can be very good for your finances because the midpoint is in Scorpio, but it's opposite Jupiter in house 2, the midpoint in house 8. So take that. But the Sun in Libra is in a quincunx with Saturn in Pisces. So once more, your relationship situation and your relationship with yourself very much dependent on how intact your emotional inner world is. How much does it need to heal? Are there elements of your situation which you've been deferring? Are there certain vulnerabilities that you've got that are holding you back? This is the year to really grapple with them. October the 12th, Mars moves into its traditional rulership beyond yours of Scorpio through till November the 24th. If there's been a lot of talking around a relationship, now there can be a lot of intimacy if you've sorted out the politics. October the 14th, that Libra solar eclipse can join in with Mercury and in an opposition with the North Node. The next 6 months can really be so much more positive for your relationships, but it's all about trying to find a balance between your individual needs, the North Node, and the energies of Libra, which is how you interact with others thoughtfully, respectfully. So that point between you is well balanced and pivoted, and that's what that eclipse gives you the opportunity to achieve. We do have a lunar eclipse on October the 28th in Taurus, in your second house, opposite the Sun in your 8th, but there's a very good angle between both to Saturn. So stuff you're doing behind the scenes, hard work, sacrifices, can see your finances shore up in the last part of this year, as long as you're realistic with Jupiter in retrograde. November the 1st is the Scorpio new moon. Again, great link to Saturn. You're getting into the theme of it. You're really finding new ways to apportion your energy, which gives you a more productive return. 4th of November, Saturn goes direct. Some of the psychological vulnerabilities and limitations that you may have been feeling, or just low energy, that can start to make way. On November the 24th, Mars, your ruler, moves into a sensational zone. If you want to travel this year, that would be a fantastic time to go for it. Also, December the 12th, the new moon in Sagittarius forges a conjunction with Mars. Wow, really, really buzzing energy to bring down this year to a close. Mercury does go retrograde on December the 13th, and the December the 22nd Cardinal Quadrant 4 for year 2023, that does have a Sun-Mercury conjunction, but they're in a sextile to Saturn. So I think that's very good for you as well. Again, the work behind the scenes can actually be very good for your career. However, the moon is squaring Pluto on that particular event. The moon's in Taurus. Could be a little bit, a second house, it's late, so it's a disassociate one, so basically like second 11. Differences of values, perhaps it's about the Christmas budget, but Mercury then rewinds into Sagittarius on the 23rd. So if you are doing that travel, again, precision around all the details is vital, but the year comes to a close with Jupiter going direct on the 30th. So to summarize your year, Aries, it's very much a year when you can get on the front foot as far as your individual talents, aims and hopes. But really, to make progress, you've got to have a very strong understanding of the more vulnerable, more sensitive, and the more compassionate side of your nature even. If you embrace all those, you don't push them away, then you make them very much part of the whole that's you, you can make enormous progress. Finances can bounce back later in this year, I feel, and the North Node in your sign is particularly critical, and there is chance for relationships with those Venus and Mars and that Leo new moon, and also that other solar eclipse in October in your opposite sign. There is a chance to get greater clarity around your relationships, but it's all down to that psychological inner world. I'm wishing you all the very best. Take care and goodbye for now.